Yeah. Wow.
We're recording. Okay. John, could I be an awful pain, a real pain, and ask you to possibly just repeat that, or at least kind of, synopsize it, because I know that there's a chair who's in another meeting with like Zapatistas from South America who's going to really want to hear what you just said.
I've just expressed appreciation of the chair's report. I found it really inspiring reading, and it really does give you a picture of just what Torridge Common Ground has managed to be up to over a period of time. And you tend to forget, as time moves on. But when you bring all these things together, it's really quite inspiring. Really sorry he's not able to be here tonight. I know he's very sorry about that too.
Yeah.
Lawrence, do you just want to very quickly summarise what you said as well? Because I think it was beautiful.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Yes. Well, I'm just saying how vital it is to actually take stock of what we've been up to in the time so far, and cumulatively put together, as Jamie so fantastically did in his report. It just reminds you of what together we are able to achieve in making a difference to our communities. And it is also, as I say, humbling to appreciate how much more needs to be done to involve the community in a real way, and invite their participation in this. It's not councillors working off their own back, it's councillors working with the backing and inspiration of the community behind them. And I think that's what we stand for, listening to what the needs are and acting on them. So it's a real privilege. And as I say, as John said, really appreciate Jamie putting it together in a very inspiring report. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you, Lawrence. Thank you, John. Has anyone else got anything that they'd like to say about the reports? No? Okay, brilliant. So item 3 is to appoint the appointment of officers to serve until the next AGM. So currently the chair is Jamie Kelsey-Fry, the secretary is Joel Heron, membership secretary is Carl Hawkins, and treasurer is John Ward. So I suppose it's about having a conversation and looking at how those people feel about those roles. And is there anyone else that would like to take on those roles? Anyone for anyone? Joel?
I know that I don't want to speak for you, John, but I know you only put yourself down as temporary anyway, did you, for treasurer? So I guess, should we look at the treasurer first?
It's very often happens with treasurers. I have to say, I'm after, if you read my report, nothing happening for a year, very much enjoying being treasurer at the moment. It's quite an easy job with Torridge Common Ground because we don't have masses and masses of transactions taking place. And all the time I'm in contact with all these lovely people. So it's a double unwhammy. It's really good. What's an unwhammy? I can't sort of think of the appropriate term, but I'm very much enjoying being treasurer, and I'm happy to go on with that role for another year. But I think the brain is getting pretty bad, and so by the next AGM, I think you're going to need to find somebody else.
Oh.
Josie?
I'd like to nominate John Ward for treasurer.
Okay,
Yeah, I'll
second.
second.
Oh, sorry. Can we have a vote?
Yeah, do you want it? Oh, hands? Yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely.
Brilliant. Thank you, John Ward. You continue to be our treasurer. That's brilliant. So if we go on to chair, so that's currently Jamie. Josie, are you aware if Jamie would want to continue that role?
And I think he's happy to, unless anybody else would like to step into it. So I believe at this point, but he is incredibly busy with the Global Assembly stuff. So if there is anybody else that would like to step in or like, you know, would consider chairing, then put your hand up. If not, I'll nominate Jamie as well.
Yeah.
Carl?
Carl.
Would you like to do it, Kay, with the help of Jamie?
Do you know, really interestingly enough, I was going to say it and then I held back from saying it. But yeah, together with Jamie would be great.
Oh, yes. Vice chairman, co-chairman.
Have I got a seconder?
Everyone seconded you.
It's not like being nominated for deputy mayor where I got hardly any votes. So this is brilliant.
So is this for co-chair or deputy chair?
Joint chair.
Joint chair.
So
Joint
everyone
chair.
okay with me
Yeah.
to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Do we need to appoint?
So then we come on to the role of secretary, which is currently held by Joel. Joel, what's your thoughts on that?
It's quite the same as John said. I know my role should be busier as secretary, but it hasn't been too taxing. I don't mind continuing to be secretary.
Oh,
Look,
well, I
Jodie's
propose.
kick me out there.
I'll definitely propose Joel.
I would just say part of the reason that the role isn't very taxing is because I'm doing all the secretary's work at the moment. But it would be really good to start to hand that back over as we move more towards community organising and out of kind of opening up structure. So just to highlight that in terms of what would normally come under secretary's role, I'm doing a lot. And I want to slowly sort of start to hand that back to you or to whoever stands as secretary to give me more space to start to do the community organising.
Yep.
Yeah.
Pascal?
I don't think we quite understand what the difference is between the secretary and the membership secretary, and how those two things could how they meet or don't meet. By the way. I think. Am I right?
Yeah. What are these roles?
So membership secretary is looking out for membership requests, signing them up, getting them on the newsletter. That's right, isn't it? Putting their details where they need to be, you know, making that initial contact. And then secretary is sort of having contact with anyone else that comes forward, or if we get any external communication and stuff.
And as secretary, I'm in charge of doing mail outs and stuff like that, I'm guessing as well, and organising meetings. Is that right?
But for
Yeah,
me,
as far as I'm aware.
Yeah.
Pascal?
Ken has his hand up. He's just put his hand up.
Sorry, Ken.
Hi, no, it's just a quick question as a newcomer. How many members are there?
We currently have 150 something people signed up to the MailChimp account, which is how we collate our membership.
Right.
A lot of those people will have signed up, maybe 2 years ago and are just still receiving the emails. So there's a big difference between the overall membership of people signed up and the actual active members. We have a steering group, which are the kind of really active members who meet once a week. And I believe there's 12 people in the steering group. And then there's the management group, which is the chair, member secretary and treasurer.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ken. Pascal?
I can never tell if I'm muted or not. Joel has reins over the mute button. But I think that just, I don't really want to make a big point, but I think there's how the membership secretary and the secretary communicate over things like mail outs and stuff like that is quite important, because they're going to the members, but it's also it's like I think we could sharpen that up a little bit.
Okay, so do we want to keep it as two separate roles still, or separate roles where, you know, there's an understanding that it's mainly joint working, or do we want to merge it into one role, Carl?
I think if Joe's happy to take it on for now, and I'm happy to stay with the membership, I think we're all aware that it's a little bit fragmented at the moment as to sort of what classifies somebody as being a member and how to communicate with them. So I think we still need to do a bit of work on how that bit is structured. So I mean, for the moment, if Joe wants to carry on being secretary, I'll carry on being the membership sort of admin for that side of things. And we can work and try and figure out a better way of doing this between us over the coming year.
Yeah, really good point. Any more comments about the roles at the minute? Carl?
I'll second Joe.
Oh yeah, sorry. Yeah, second Joel. All those in favour? Brilliant. So just to clarify, chair and co-chair is myself and Jamie Kelsey-Fry. Secretary remains as Joel Heron. Membership secretary remains as Carl Hawkins, and treasurer remains as John Ward. So that's brilliant. Thank you. Joel and then Carl.
Do we need to vote Carl in as well?
Yeah. I'll
Yeah,
second Carl. All those in favour?
Full
I'd make
house.
a chair at council, wouldn't I? Everyone would be going, that's lovely. Any more input for that item?
Keith has his hand up, but I don't know if it's just from before.
Oh, Ken?
Ken, rather, sorry.
Oh,
Come down.
thank you. So item 4 on the agenda is to agree amendments to the Constitution as already circulated. So I'm just going to try and bring that up on my phone because I'm not very good at having things on the same screen. Has anyone got any comments, suggestions, questions, technical points on this?
No.
No?
No.
No questions? So
I propose we accept it.
yeah, okay, I'll second that. All those in favour? Fantastic. And I've always wanted to say this, like they say at the council, that's a unanimous vote. I love it. Brilliant. Okay, let me just bring the agenda up again. So that is all the items on the agenda. So basically, following the AGM, we're planning an assembly asking what next for Torridge Common Ground. I mean, obviously, we'd love you all to be there and appreciate people spreading the word for that. And the invitation advertisement will be coming out for that shortly. Josie?
We're holding an assembly now.
Oh, yeah, of course we are.
We will have a bigger assembly as well later, but this is just okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
there's a couple of things. There's just a couple of things that Alan asked us to bring to the meeting, which I can speak to first if you want me to.
Yeah.
And I've asked Carl if he can organise one breakout room. So what we'll basically do is we'll just talk through these couple of things which Alan wanted us to bring to the meeting, and then we'll go into 2 smaller groups, and then we'll just have a conversation in those smaller groups with one person facilitating the conversation, just like Kay's been doing in here, and one person in the group note taking. And we're just going to have a really good ideas generation, perspectives, what people feel we need to focus on, how we need to move forward in those groups. And the note takers are going to have the AGM document that they can note take into. And I would suggest, Carl, that whoever gets put into one room, but sorry, I'm trying to do several things at the same time and then not concentrating. I would suggest that perhaps we organise who's going to be note taker, and we make sure that whoever's going to be note taker in each room has got this document up so they can note take directly into it. Pascal, you're going to be note taker.
I'll be one, yeah.
Okay, I can be the other, depending on who, and we need a facilitator for each room. So, okay, if you're happy to facilitate one room, Joel, do you want to have a go at facilitating the other room, or anyone else?
Yeah, I don't mind.
Okay.
But I'd need to be in the same room as Pascal.
As Pascal. Okay, so Carl, if you can put me and Kay in one room, Joel and Pascal in the other room, and apportion everybody else out, but not yet, if that's okay. So the two items that Alan wanted brought to the meeting are two things that we need to think about. Obviously, as Steve said, he's planning on standing as a candidate in the by-election, the upcoming Bideford by-election for Bideford South. And so obviously we're about to go back into essentially another campaign for a Torridge Common Ground seat in Bideford South, which would give us 4 TCG councillors on Bideford Town Council, which would be amazing. So it would be really good if people can think about that, and perhaps how we might be able to engage more with people around that. Just any thoughts or any ideas about anything to do with that, or any questions for Steve, or anything around the upcoming Bideford South campaign. If anybody's got any ideas, thoughts, questions, suggestions at this point. Steve.
I had communication from Tom Vanstone at Torridge, as he promised he would, and he sent me the official vacancy notification, which I think we've all seen anyway, but also the timetable of various events and steps along the way, and the paperwork for putting myself forward as a candidate. And I think I need 2 supporters, co-signatories or something of that sort. I can circulate certainly the the timetable if people would like to see that, or any of it really. But yeah, now the date is the 24th of June is the election.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe if you could email us the timetable, and then we could actually make a plan and circulate it to the rest of the members, just so that people have an idea of kind of when we're going to be doing things.
Sure. I think the only email addresses I've got is yours, Josie, and Carl's. But I mean, you're both good people to mail it to, so I'll send it to you.
I'll put mine in the chat now, Steve.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions about mounting a campaign for the Bideford South vacancy by the 24th of June? Ali.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, with all the thoughts and general agreement about the importance of confluence, whether we've thought about that, because before a campaign is surely the time to think about that and to address that. And are we in contact with do we know who else is standing or intending to stand or thinking of standing? Have we made any contacts or links? I'm just wondering, just thinking out loud, really.
They didn't, if I'll just put this in, Tom did not say who it is that's standing, but obviously it's somebody who's gathered 10 signatories to support their candidature. So I think one of the TC TCG group suggested it might be a Labour Party person because the other two councillors in South Ward are both Labour Party town councillors. So maybe they would be happy to have a third Labour Party councillor, but that's conjecture.
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. Pretty certain that there is a Labour candidate being put forward, potentially an independent as well. But I think that's a really good point, Alison. You know, we could approach those people or we should approach those people and have conversations with them. I mean, the Labour candidate who I think will be standing, I know reasonably well. And have done some really low level confluence with him. So yeah, has anyone else got any thoughts on that? I mean, it's one of the things that we could talk about when we go into breakout rooms is maybe some sort of ideas at how we could do that. Yeah.
Yeah, sounds like a reasonable idea to me.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. And I think it's really important, isn't it? It's a big thing for, say, for TCG or for anyone to approach people at the time of an election and open a real sort of clear, good conversation with them without it sort of being challenging. So, you know, opening the conversation to say, you know, can we work together? You know, just an open discussion. I think that's really important because I don't think that that's happened before. You know, we're coming only with an agenda that we want the community to have their voice heard. Not only, you know, it's the biggest thing going, it's what we're here for. But I think a lot of that stuff goes on behind closed doors before. So for us to open up those conversations, I think is really, really powerful.
Yeah. I mean, it's always better to join forces or to share resources with people who've got a similar goal than to, you know, to lock yourself in and go, well, they're not part of my team, you know, so we will oppose them and spend a lot of time and energy snarking about them all the time. It's much more sensible, I think, to kind of go, well, we're headed in the same direction, and to see if there are areas of common interest that can be addressed to the benefits of both, or however many people there may be involved.
Yeah, really good point, Steve. Thank you. Has anyone else got anything that they'd like to say? John?
I was also thinking that we ought to actually kind of get a team of people together to help Steve in these elections, and basically to give advice, especially on if he's doing leaflets, and to try and work out what he wants in a leaflet and how to go about it, you know, from our own experiences.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Thanks.
And also help with the funding maybe as well.
Yeah, well, I'm I'm not independently wealthy, so one idea I did come up with, which I mentioned last time we had a meeting, was the idea of printing off some Torridge Common Ground logos on an A4 piece of paper, because it's a roughly square form. Then A4 is rectangular, so it leaves a blank space underneath it, and you can then stick something, literally print out another piece of information. It then becomes a standard template, if you like. And I think to print, say, 100 of the TCG logo would be relatively cheap, and you're not then printing a large number of things which are only good for one election. You're printing basically a blank template just with the logo, and then you can stick underneath, if you're with me, underneath it, stick a set of information saying this 24th of June, vote for Torridge Common Ground candidate. And at a later time, if there are any left that haven't been used for the election, you can use them for something else. You know, this weekend there's a meeting, whatever. Does that make sense?
Brilliant. So we're just going to very quickly go to Joel and Lawrence, and then we're going to go forward with the assembly and go into breakout rooms. So Joel?
That's a really good idea, Steve. I think we should use that from now on, because I've got quite a few leaflets left over, and it's a real shame that they've just got my big face on them and can't be used for anything else. So I think that type of branding with no date, no, just the logo, with like a pro forma, if you like, with just some, so you can utilize that for whatever is genius. We should do that. I think that's really good.
Yeah, Lawrence.
Yeah, well, it was just a thought. I know it's not a breakout group yet at this stage, but hearing what Steve was saying, I thought it's rather nice, but just a thought, passing thought, that if you are going to circulate, let's say, the TCG logo, that one could make a big point that actually we do believe in listening to people. And if you have any really causes for concern that you'd like to raise, leave a little space at the bottom of the handout or printout for somebody to write a comment in. I'm really concerned about this, and these are the sort of things that we want to act upon, what concerns you? Because so often the election leaflets are, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. And it might be refreshing to actually just put the listening and hearing into the computation. That's all I'm suggesting. It's just a passing thought.
Okay, we'll go to Pascal and then we'll move on to the full assembly.
Sorry, I just didn't know. I don't know, Lawrence, if you saw this. This was Joel's county council.
Oh, yes.
And then there was there
you are. I hadn't seen it, Pascal. That's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. Yeah. Well done, Joel.
We got
Fantastic.
quite a few back as well. It was good.
Yeah.
Buses and all kinds.
First class.
Brilliant. So thank you, everybody. That was really good. So moving on to the assembly. So the question is, what is next for TCG with a focus on how to approach the South Ward councillor vacancy? Obviously, we've heard from Steve that he would like to stand for that. So I think in a minute, we're going to go into 2 breakout rooms and we can carry the conversation there. How long are we going to go to breakout rooms for?
We'll probably have about 20 minutes, 25 minutes in breakouts room, 20 minutes, and then we'll come back into the main room and maybe just share some of the main points that came from those discussions in the main room.
Okay, brilliant. All right. Is Carl pressing the magic buttons?
Yeah, I can do that. I just wanted to double check. So we want Pascal and who's it, Josie in different rooms?
Oh yeah, so Pascal and Joel have to go in one room and Kay and I have to go in another one.
Yeah, that's what I've written down. Yeah, okay.
See you all on the other side.
See you in a minute. Or 10.
There we go.
Hi, Steve. Did you have something come up on your screen to join a breakout room?
Sorry, I might have done. I was just trying to, yes, room 1.
How might we use social media to increase public awareness of this campaign and TCG more widely? That was another question from Alan.
Right, okay, so which one are we doing first?
Well, they both link together a little bit, but Steve, the campaign, and social media to support the campaign.
Right, okay, okay. But can I just start with my experience of social media in the Devon campaign? Was it was quite interesting actually. I went onto Twitter and I was doing some stuff on Facebook, but because on Facebook, probably in Bideford, I have 100 followers from Bideford or the Southwest, and on Twitter, I guess 125 followers. I'm not sure how many followers Steve has, but it was, you know, sometimes I'd put something out and it would get 5 likes from people that lived in Bideford, Western Heartland. And I found it absolutely ineffective, I think, unless you're going to pay for it, which sends, you know, posts directly onto people's timelines. Ali, what would you say about that?
I just wanted to say that I thought what you did by joining the different village community groups was a really good move. And I know that, or I know my daughter spoke about it last time because she was in the Woolsbury one, but I know several people who only knew about the election really, but certainly only knew anything about you or that you were standing because of you making the effort to join in the community group, village community group, and the fact that you actually answered people as well, which was really important.
Right. I mean, yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, I did. Yeah, and I guess they wouldn't have known who I was if I didn't do that. But it was just seemed I was speaking to the same people, if you know what I mean, which was great. But possibly 2 or 3 or 4 people from each group that I joined. It's really difficult to boost that without paying Facebook to do so, kind of thing. And then it felt kind of that I was imposing on people by doing it as well. It's quite interesting. Social media is so weird, isn't it? It's quite an interesting thing. But yeah, joining the individual groups was really good. So the Southward, I'm guessing, is just going to be Bideford banter or something like that. I know. John and then Pascal.
I think it takes a long while for that to work for social media on different platforms, different villages and parishes, and it takes over a few years usually for something like that to work properly, so that they actually recognise you and get to know you as such. Also, another way I found also on social media is to put a lot of pictures up as well, photographs of things you've been doing in life, ordinary things as well, which helps. So they get to know some of your interests as well, like with me with wildlife.
Yeah, nice one, John. Pascal.
Just coming back to what Ali was mentioning about, being active in the community. There must be, I mean, we're talking about online community groups, but there are some actual live community groups that it might be, I don't know. I mean, like obviously people aren't kind of meeting up face to face a lot at the moment. But even if sort of finding out where those sort of the social connectors, where the places are, even just being available in the pub for a chat. Whether that is in the I don't know if the community hall, it's gone out of my head, the community centre in Easter Water.
Polyfield.
I don't know if that's open at the moment, but even if he was able to be at a place for an hour or two, that could be advertised on Facebook, that he's he's actually present to be able to have a chat with people. Some, if there's no community group, is there a community space that he might attend and be seen to be at?
It would be good if it was actually in the ward, wouldn't it?
I don't think there is anywhere in South Ward. Carl, can you think of anywhere? I can't think of a community hall or a space like that, except for the shop.
We got first in, last out with a room at the back.
Oh yeah.
But well, yeah, it's not open at the moment. But
are they still not open?
No.
The pub's open, but only for 6 people, groups of 6, so they're not hiring the back room yet.
Right.
And the other place in South that would have a large open area would be the racket centre, where the elections took place.
The what centre?
The tennis club by the dump.
What's it called?
Atlantic Racket Centre.
Atlantic Racket Centre.
They got squash courts there, just out of interest.
No, I didn't see them.
Right.
Is Atlantic Village in Bideford South?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So could it be something as simple as in Asda car park, or?
It's I did some canvassing at Atlantic Village, and we were unsure as to we didn't get stopped, but we didn't know who owns what. Like Asda owns or rents from Affinity Devon, whatever they're called now. And I guess the car park might even be owned by someone else. I'm not sure how it works up there. Brian.
There's in Atlantic Village, it's like an amphitheatre by the play, the big play area. Is that for public speaking, or is that for performance? Do you know what I mean? If you go in the long stay car park,
by the pirate ship kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's like an amphitheatre thing. There were seats all around. I don't know whether that's for public speaking or.
Why not?
I guess there's nothing else it could be built for, is there? I mean, it's either for stage plays or Greek stage plays in Greek, hopefully, in ancient Greek, or public speaking.
It'd be worth finding out about, John.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Is it called? It's Affinity Devon or something. It's called now, isn't it?
Yeah,
Affinity
I think
Devon.
that's right, Joel. Yeah, I always call it Atlantic Village, but it's Affinity over the door, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it changed. Yeah. I mean, that could be a really good space for all of us to utilise, couldn't it? At some point, especially because I think we'll probably be in and out of lockdown and social distancing for 5 years maybe. There's my thoughts. So it could be really good to utilise that space.
It's a possibility. I'm not saying that you would get in there, but like you say, it's got to be for a performance or a speaking place, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I really want to look on Google Maps now.
I think it might be attached to the children's play part, and that's all been taken over by somebody different reasonably recently. What used to be the soft play area has been taken. I can't remember the name of who it is now, but I have a feeling that might be part of them.
Yeah, not to go off on a tangent, I think there's talk of a cinema and a new hotel and all kinds up there as well, which might be on the amphitheatre. Hopefully not.
We can certainly find out, can't
we can find out. Yeah. So cool. In South Ward, we've got first in, last out. We've got the amphitheatre. Oh, that park's not there. Are there any decent parks? There's Ford Woods. There's
the The fort, the park with the fort in it.
That's Easter Water.
Is Bideford South not Easter Water?
Victoria
No.
Park, you mean?
No, Victoria Park's North Ward.
North, oh.
So is the park next to the fire station.
Is it?
I can't think of any other parks, but there's 3 places to explore anyway. But I mean, when's the actual election? 24th of June?
26.
26th. So it gives us 4 weeks, 4.5 weeks from now, which is, wow, not a lot of time at all to organise things. And we knew that I was running for Devon 6 months ago, and it seemed, or 5 months ago, it seemed that we were forever 3 weeks behind where we were supposed to be, or 4 weeks behind where we were supposed to be. So to have 4 weeks to do it is going to be a real mission, especially if we're up against the Labour Party, who seem to be calling the shots on actually calling in the election. I would imagine they've got some quite specific, well, you know, they've got hundreds of members, haven't they? Thousands of members. So
Joe, thinking about,
sorry, Brian.
yeah, but you're up against Labour, but there are a lot of people in Bideford that are really disillusioned with the main parties, and also on the Bideford West and Heartland, the turnout was only 32.5%, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It's dismal, really dismal. And I think on your leaflet, or on Steve, Steve, is it?
Yeah.
It wants, if you want to change things, you've got to vote.
Yeah.
Because I think the best chance of getting somebody in is getting more people to vote. Because people that do vote tend to stick on their own party lines, so whether it's Conservative or Labour, or you want new voters to actually vote for independence, don't you?
Agreed. And hopefully some extra people. Mr. Wilson Love got into county with 15% of the electorate's votes. I worked out kind of roughly, which is quite astounding, really. So it means that 85% of people didn't vote for him, but he's in there. It makes me think sometimes that the people that don't vote, the 70% of the people that don't vote, we should just say, all right, okay, so there's not going to be anyone standing. There's not going to be anyone voted in, because 70% of people said nothing. It would make more sense like that, I think. But yeah, how do we get people to vote in 4.5 weeks? Through social media. The people that we want to vote, the younger people, aren't on Facebook. People under 40 don't go on Facebook, really. They're on Twitter and Instagram. I don't know if Steve's got Twitter or Instagram accounts. I've got a Twitter account, but I found, you know, I got 100. I think I'm up to 200 members, and that took about 3 months of constant tweeting. It's a really tough thing to do. You can, I don't know, maybe we do want to talk about paying for some adverts on Twitter or something to see if it works. I've never put an advert out on Twitter, so I would have no idea if it works or not. And the only experience I had of Facebook advertising wasn't really effective. When I had my little cafe, I put a few adverts out, and I think I got a phone call from a woman in Southampton, and I think I got an email from someone in Cardiff, which cost me 20 or 30 quid, which was, I don't even know if it put adverts on people's timelines. Pascal.
I think with all of these things, it makes a big difference how big your catchment is. And it seems like there's 2 sides to this. One is obviously to try and get Stephen elected, and the other is to continue to promote what it is that Torridge Common Ground represents, and to attract people, because you know we've got very small capacity in terms of the sort of nerve centre to be able to kind of make things happen and to really kind of have a big impact on our local communities across Torridge, which is quite an ambition, let alone Bideford, where there is a bit more kind of there are a few more people actually already connected to the town. So it feels like, yeah, why not, if there is money available in the bank account, why not make a kind of reasonable, we obviously don't want to spend a ridiculous amount of money on it, but why not make some strategic experiments about how advertising on social media might work. You know, if it's going to make, even if it's going to make a small gain over time, incrementally, you know, connections build connections that build connections. And I think maybe this is a point to spend a small amount of money strategically. Yeah,
good point. John?
I think that recently we've had a more or less a apology from the officer, one of the officers at Torridge District Council, which came to all parish councils and town councils about the way that they have backed all these developments. So I think we should put on our agenda for putting down, with Steve's consent, that we could use what they've said and attack Torridge District Council directly through there and the party system, with because they've shown by their apology that they are in the wrong over all these different developments locally, and that we can use that and put that in Steve's leaflet as one of the things he wants to change, which is to make them stand up and follow the local plan, which they didn't with 30% affordable housing for local people.
Yeah, that would be good. I think developments on the in the top three, isn't it? Definitely. I think people are really interested in all of my door knocking that I've ever done, canvassing for TCG. Development is definitely up there. And I just want to go back to what Pascal said about social media and paying, because I think myself, Carl, and maybe 10 other people have done quite a lot of work in Bideford South over the last month of delivering and canvassing, whether that's knocking on doors or just putting stuff through the door for myself. And people have had the postcard from me and the another leaflet that was describing myself in a bit more detail, both of which were solidly Torridge Common Ground branded. And I wonder if people are just going to get more leaflets through the door, might they just be a bit overloaded? But if we do take maybe a risk and spend some money on social media, might that be more effective? Because are people going to be overloaded with TCG flyers, or is social media a bit greener as well?
Yeah, social media would work better with younger people and people that are computer savvy, but there are still people out there that wouldn't do a Zoom meeting, wouldn't go on Facebook or anything like that. I think one of the things you could do is if you made the actual members more proactive in sharing. Would that be a way of doing it? That say I shared to whoever I knew, got my wife to share, whoever she knew, got them to share to. If you actually got that instilled in people's minds to share and share and share, to get it out there.
I think sharing.
I think that's a very good idea.
Carl, go on.
I believe we're about nearly at the 20-minute mark.
Right.
Normally, when I participate in a room like this, it comes up with a message saying that, you know, it will shut down in about a minute's time. For the life of me, I can't find where it's how to do that. So I think in a second, when I press the button, we might all just disappear back into the main room. So I thought I'd better pre-warn you.
Right. Go on, John.
I was going to say that on these sites there, that there's also a slight problem. Also, is I know that on my local Torrington one, that the admin have told me not to share political stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, basically you can get banned if you do put political stuff on there.
That's quite interesting.
Yeah. So that why it might not be a good way forward.
Oh,
Who's
John's pinged himself off.
John's pinged off. He's in a different dimension.
That wasn't me. He just vanished.
He's
Got
his magic.
36 seconds.
Oh,
No, John's gone. We're going one at a time.
I think it would be really interesting to find out. I wonder if we could get a breakdown of the demographics of people that voted and find out, because then you could possibly start thinking about age-wise, and you could possibly start thinking about what social media they use. So I bet most people are just Facebook. I don't think many people that are under the age of 40 voted. I don't know. I wonder if we could get that. Brian, you're muted.
Muted.
Boing.
Is it a magic roundabout?
Oh.
Just wait for I think everyone's back in the room. Yeah. Carl, are you okay? You ready? I can't see you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, brilliant. So welcome back, everyone. I hope you had some good conversations. We had some wicked conversations. I'm going to be really naughty while I get all those conversations to the forefront of my mind. I'm going to ask the facilitator from the other group, which was Joel, to bring forward just a kind of sample of what you guys were talking about and sort of what came out of those conversations.
Yes, we were talking about, you can help me out here if I forget stuff, mostly about how easy it would be for Steve to get noticed. We were talking about, firstly, about being active within the community, and we were talking about places where, bearing in mind we've only got 4.5 weeks or something like that, we were talking about places where Steve could be seen in the community. We thought about the First In Last Out, which is the pub.
Mm-hmm.
We thought about the tennis club, which is just down from the tip in Affinity Village, whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And also there's an amphitheatre, Steve, at Affinity Village, where I think you're going to be doing some talks. But we're just thinking, there's an amphitheatre there. We were just thinking off the cuff about places that are community kind of open to everyone within Bideford South Ward. So they were those things. We were talking about social media and about the importance of social media and whether it's worth actually spending some money on doing some social media adverts, which we've never done before as TCG, but which would splash us all over everyone's timelines. And I'm not sure how much we would, we didn't discuss a budget for that. And we finished, and I think Brian was trying to say something, but we got kicked out. We were talking about it would be really great if we could get some demographics from Torridge, if they exist, on the age of people that voted. And we might be able to work out what kind of social media they're on. And obviously the people that are not voting, their age would be really good as well to see, because I would imagine it's all the Twitter and Instagram people that aren't voting. So it's probably not worth advertising on those mediums. Go on.
Just 2 more points.
Go on.
One was do we want to be specific about any kind of campaign point? Like, do we want to talk specifically about planning, for example, and have a, you know, present an attitude towards that? And the other one was about how you, in whatever media, the ways in which we can think about how you can share. So, you know, this was about kind of sharing back ideas to Joel and TCG more widely. But are there any other, how can we encourage our members, like if we put a post out on a social media platform, how can we encourage our membership and anyone else to share that? You know, what are the mechanisms whereby we can kind of get, you know, one person sending out a message on Facebook can only get so far, but if the 150 members can, or at least a proportion of that list can help by amplifying that message, how can we think about that, you know, holistically?
So I think when I did the hashtag Vote for Joel, which was works across all platforms as well, so on Twitter and on Facebook, that was working, but something like that would be really good. Sometimes hashtag, and also we need to check the hashtag, because hashtag Vote for Joel, there were elections in America going on at the same time for school governors, and there were quite a lot of hashtag Vote for Joels in about 2 or 3 states across the state.
Oh, so you got voted in there, did you?
Now you're running a high school in Minnesota, is it?
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty. That was pretty much our 20 minutes, unless anyone can remember anything else that I've missed or Pascal's missed.
Anyone from that group want to input anything?
Well, I did. It was mentioned towards the end there that on my local Torrington group, that I was, if I mentioned politics in there or any type of petition, that, you know, they said that, you know, the admin contacted me and said that you can get chucked out of this group if you carry on doing that. So I don't think in that case that, you know, media, you have to be very careful how you go forward with media, because you can get kicked out by the admin, because basically the admin is God in all of these different chat rooms, like, you know, Biddy for banter and everything else.
Okay.
Sure, you can check what's permissible before you post it. Is there a general rule for any group that says, you know, no political postings, or, you know, nothing racist, misogynist, whatever? Or do you just have to post what you think and hope it's all right?
Going to be quite varied, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. If you've got different admins on different groups, is it simply down to one person's personal taste, if you like?
Yeah, it's tricky. Thanks for that. Has anyone else got anything? Tina?
Only that usually in the group rules, right at the top of a pinned post on a group, it will say what you're allowed and what you're not allowed to post.
Yeah. Okay, so brilliant. Sounds like some really good conversations. So if we move on to our group's conversation, so you guys have been talking about how to promote Steve. Our conversation kind of curveballed a little bit more. So Steve was talking about some of the things that he thought, you know, the community wanted answers to, stuff we could look at, like 20's Plenty campaign for the 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, stuff to do with recycling and items being charged for and trying to reduce the amount of fly tipping. And then Steve went into this kind of amazing talk about that he would be more than willing not to stand if it meant doing confluence and joining forces with someone else and supporting them to stand. because one of the things that Tom brought up is about confluence, the importance of it, and actually what are we doing to do confluence? Are we opening discussions and conversations around that with other candidates? I sort of talked a little bit about my understanding of, I think I'm aware of 2 of the possible candidates for the South Ward, and I spoke about one in particular who's a Labour candidate, who's very embedded within the community, who's stood in an election before for town council, and it felt to me like he was probably more in line with TCG's sort of views and where we're going. And it was just a really, really interesting conversation. And I just really want to hold my hands up to Steve for saying that, and saying, you know, more than happy not to stand, can still work on stuff, but actually it's about what's best going forward for TCG and opening those conversations, confluence.
Sorry to interrupt, but as Tom said, there's no point in splitting a vote. You know, there might be some people who would vote for me as a candidate. Mainly other people might vote for the Labour candidate, and you just end up with a split vote, and that doesn't really benefit anybody.
Yeah. And one of the other things that Tom said, you know, we all agreed with, was we need to have a wider conversation about confluence and what we can do to take that forward. And then if I can move on to Josie, because you can probably explain a bit better than I can about what you were saying and talking about like the flat pack stuff, but actually, you know, within Bideford, and it's a different landscape. Can you just touch on what you said, Josie? Is that all right?
Yeah, I basically said that I think that this is a big conversation that we really need to look at, and I think that I agreed with what Tom said about, you know, the way that we had kind of approached things and brought candidates forward and made really great gains at the start, and then needing to look at how that approach might evolve or what the current situations are. And I said I think it needs to be a much bigger conversation about what is appropriate in terms of Bideford and in terms of the political landscape, the social landscape, and the demographic that we're dealing with, that perhaps is not the same as other towns where they have used some of the tools that we're using, that perhaps we need to really look at our specific situations and the toolkit that we're drawing from. But I agreed that it needed to be a bigger conversation, which is what we've been talking about doing. And I said that one of the reasons that it was really interesting for me was, obviously this is the first time in a while that we've brought people who are external into an open conversation with people who are essentially, to all intents and purposes, internal. And I was just really interested in hearing what was you know, in the forefront of their mind for them. And I guess the questions around, you know, I think Tom said that Steve's only been here a year, and one thing we know about Bideford is that you know, Bideford likes things that they know and likes old. So how, you know, how does that mesh in with how we put that forward? And I think these are all they're all part of a much bigger conversation, basically. So it was interesting for me, and I think it's something that needs to be kind of unpicked more, which is what I said in the last steering group meeting.
Thank you, Josie. I've just got a very quick direct point from that I think I forgot to mention in the breakout room. But we've only got, was it 4 or 5 weeks until the election? So that's going to play a part in this as well, and what we're able to do. And it's having those conversations quite quickly and deciding, do we still stand someone, being Steve, who's come forward, or do we sit back? And we obviously need to make that conversation, make that decision incredibly quickly, because there is only those few weeks left until that election date. And if we are going to stand him, then, you know, we need to pull our socks up and sort of get moving with the campaign. Pascal?
There seems to be there's a big you know, part of this unpacking is about what kind of confluence means from both ends. So like if for example in this occasion, if we were interested in saying, okay, whoever the Labour candidate is in this case, if they happen to their moral and ethical code or whatever happens to chime well with the principles that TCG stands by, then do we in that instance say, okay, this person's likely to get a fair percentage of a small turnout? You know, does that make sense to sort of to work with a Labour candidate who and where do we say actually what we're trying to this is me speaking a little bit here, but I interpret what TCG represents is about stepping outside of the party politics system completely. And so in that case, are we saying, are we looking to work with independent candidates who aren't controlled to some extent by the needs of a party mechanism? And so obviously together we need to have a joint understanding about how much we will how much we will move to be open, and how much we expect people on the other side to confluine towards us. You know what I mean? There's a two-way thing there.
Yeah.
And my interpretation of it is that we're looking to step aside from party politics, and there's something quite clear for me. But obviously, there's likely to be a wide range of interpretations across, this gathering, let alone the wider membership.
Thank you. Could we go to Tina next, please, and then we'll go to Steve.
I was kind of agreeing with Pascal. If we were going to aid in confluence with somebody that isn't a TCG member, it should be an independent. It shouldn't be a member of another party. Because if people are trying to vote in independence, they're not going to be voting Labour, are they? So, do you see what I mean? Because they can't bend their rules to join in with a TCG ideology, because they'll be kicked out of their party then, and they won't want to do that. So it either needs to be an independent or Steve.
Very quickly, direct point. I totally get where you're coming from, Tina, and again, it just feeds into that wider conversation. I think Steve had his hand up next.
Yeah, the whole idea of working with a Labour candidate or an independent candidate, and the principle of first past the post versus proportional representation, and the idea of compromise. One of the great benefits, I think, of PR is that you tend to end up with a number of parties, none of which have an overruling majority, and so they have to compromise then. And that's the system. I was in Copenhagen a few years back, and it happened to be the night of the count of the general election. And I was amazed that all the people in this bar, happened to be in a bar, were all saying, yes, well, if she gets in there, then that gives them 12 seats, which gives them, and they were all discussing this strategic, tactical arrangements, because they were all keyed into this whole idea of compromise and working with groups of people who weren't 100% the same aims and same strategies as perhaps the people themselves would have adopted, but they go, well, we'll work with them because it's close to what we want. I heard somebody talking about elections if you want to go to a particular place in town and there isn't a bus that goes directly there, well, you get a bus that goes sort of near there and you get off and walk the last little bit. And that's maybe how politics should be done, because I essentially, you know, I would do things exactly the way I want them done if I ruled the world, but I don't. So I have to, you know, I negotiate with people and I reach compromises with people and I put up with things that ideally, in a way, I wouldn't put up with, because I recognize that that's the way to get things close enough to what I want that I can live with, and other people also get close enough to what they want and they can live with.
Yeah, really good point, Steve. Thank you. So next we'll go to Tom, then it's Tina, and then it's Joel.
I just wanted to reiterate the thing that confluence is a two-way process. TCG is supposed to be outside the political system, but as soon as you start talking about members of TCG, you're kind of falling down the same rabbit hole. The whole point for me is community engagement. So if a candidate is prepared to be community engaged and that they would meet us on certain issues, then why should we have to oppose them rather than working with them? And it's a two-way process. They would have to give as well. And I think that is the main point of how we approach the discussion about confluence, because you know, no matter what we feel about it intrinsically in terms of our existing structures, I only think the only way we are going to actually get power back to the people is by having locally based people who care about the community, and that we as a group can work with and say, come on in, come and discuss with us as well as with your party. And then they could learn. You know, it's a huge learning exercise. At the moment, Labour are not getting in. At the moment, the Liberals are not getting in. At the moment, Greens are not getting in. Between us, we are the majority. And that's my big point about this. And how we started, it's a massive conversation, as Josie has said several times this evening. It's a massive conversation outside, beyond this group. Where do we go from here? How can we get the Tories out?
Yes. Thanks, Tom. Tina?
Kind of, I get what you're saying, and yeah, I mean, I think there are members of TCG from all political parties anyway, so nobody's really bothered about that. But as obviously Carl's been to several council meetings and they all vote the same way of their party, so the only way to change anything is to get a majority vote for TCG who are going to be independents and vote for what they think is better for their communities. So yeah, there's Conservatives that won't vote for something because Labour suggested it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Tina. Josie's got a direct point to that, and then we'll come to Joel.
I just wanted to clarify, is that are you talking about a district or at town? Because at town, there's not many, looking through the town councillors, I know we've got some people who have stood as party candidates, but I think the majority on town are technically independents, aren't they, of different ilks?
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
Sorry, Josie. They are, but you tend to get the same sort of pattern as you would on districts with the parties linking together, because there's almost pockets of people. I think Joel and Carl would agree with me on that. So like Tina said, until we get that majority independent, those patterns aren't going to be broken. Joel and then Carl?
Yeah, at town, people, you know, the left sit on the left and the right sit on the right. It's a small version of the Commons, really. But I wouldn't have joined Torridge Common Ground if it wasn't something extraordinarily different to mainstream politics. And I think if you're talking about having confluence with a Labour politician, or albeit at a town council level, you've got to remember that they're still being whipped by Westminster. So whatever we're talking about housing wise or social care wise or whatnot wise, he or she isn't going to be able to say, "Oh, that's great," but by the way, my boss is telling me something different. That's the whole thing that I'm, you know, I want to change stuff. I've never been, realistically, I've never been supported by any of these big parties, and I think they're all part of a system that is massively broken. And I think if we're starting to talk about confluence with people like that, then you know, we need to, as Tom said, it's a big conversation. It is a big conversation. That's me.
Trying to think how, for example, talking about confluence with Jake McLean goes to the elections, wins, gets a seat. I'm absolutely all for showing confluence to him with many of the things that we may be discussing in council. One of the reasons and the things that I like about TCG is it's the signals that we're using aren't coming from the top. The idea is we're ground level trying to build a way up, and that's what was appealing to me. And I think if we start to talk about stepping aside for these top-down usual political parties, TCG may as well not even exist, because we'll just step out of the way and let everything continue as normal. That's the way I would see it. So if Jake McLean wants to get a seat and he thinks he's going to have a trouble going against a TCG member, then he needs to rethink what party he sits in. That's my view. We can't start making room for different people. And, you know, if a TCG member wants to run for Bideford South, we should back them.
Has John Ward left already? Sorry. Okay. Sorry, Brian. Before we go any further, could we put something forward? Could we do a proposal that we invite everyone? Sorry, Josie.
Just because Brian hasn't spoken yet, if he's got his hand up, could we hear from him and then move to proposal? Is that all right?
Sorry, Brian.
That's okay.
All right. It's agony, isn't it, with this confluence thing? But Torridge Common Ground, as I take it, and all the movement that you're part of, is about changing the system. If you don't stand candidates, you won't change the system. As I say, it's agony, because you know it's splitting the vote, or we might split the vote. But at the same time, if you don't do it, where are you?
We want to get the vote, not split the vote.
And we did last time.
Yeah, no, really great points. Thank you, Brian. Thank you to everybody. So yeah, we'd like to propose that we invite everyone to the TCG meeting on Thursday to be able to continue this conversation, because it is so here and now, and it can't wait. I don't know if everyone would agree with that. How would everyone feel about that? So I'd like to propose that. If people are all in agreement, that would be really fab. But if you've got any comments on that, or concerns, or sort of suggestions, then that'd be really great. Oh, is that Tina or Carl have got their hand up? I think there's a bit of a disagreement.
It's me.
Tina.
He got in front of me. That's going to leave a week less for a campaign, though. Next Thursday, isn't it? So time's already short, and it's just going to be another week less.
Can I say something really quickly? I don't know what everyone feels about this. I don't know if we need to write a very quick mail out, Josie. But could we suggest like making a decision, because actually it coming out tonight that it is literally 4 or 5 weeks. you know, you're so right. That's going to be another week ahead and another week lost. I kind of don't know what to do. Anyone got any thoughts on that?
Yeah.
Steve?
Yeah, the last date for registration is Tuesday the 8th. So we've got to have something decided no later than Tuesday the 8th. And I'm willing to stand. I'm perfectly, you know, that was an idea I had, and I'm willing to carry on. But equally, if the feeling of the group is that it would be better to not have a TCG person standing, I'm willing to stand down.
Very quickly, Steve. Sorry, John, I will get to you. This is a direct clarification point. We are still learning here, Steve, and I don't want you to think we're undecisive or anything like that. And maybe to a point we are, but it's because we want to do the best that we possibly can. You know, we are still new. We have all been elected for 2 years, and not to make an excuse, but a big chunk of that has been in a pandemic, and we are still finding our feet. But I think that's where the authenticity of TCG is not knowing all the answers and going, oh, do we do? You know, I do think that's a strong point as well as sometimes a weakness. John?
I propose that we vote for Steve to go ahead and get it started and rolling, and that we also actually create a group here to help that going forward. Now,
I second that.
Okay, should we take a vote? Josie, you look a bit.
That as a proposal just seems kind of completely counter to the conversation that everybody's just been having. That feels like a sort of a. I think everyone's been saying this is a really important thing, and actually we've got very, very little time, but we need to really think about this, and we need to kind of clarify our position on it. And I think proposing that we instantly make a decision right here, right now, with the people in this room on that is kind of counter to what everyone's just been saying. That's what I think.
I would like to make a counter proposal that we very quickly arrange an emergency meeting over the weekend and get as many people involved as we possibly can, with a view to resolving this and getting an answer on what we're going to do. Joel?
Tina had a hand up first, and then
Tina
Joel.
first, sorry.
Yeah, I know you're saying this decision's a little bit rushed, and I get that, but we've been talking with Steve for a couple of weeks now with the premise that we're going to help him stand. So I don't feel it's a rushed decision at all. And for a meeting at the weekend,
let's blame Steve. Sorry, go on, Tina.
A lot of people might not be able to make an emergency weekend meeting because it's short notice anyway. So we might have even less people than we've got here now.
Yeah, Steve, go on.
Well, Joel had his hand up first, and then
Sorry,
Steve.
Joel.
And so is the big question, I'm guessing, is about confluence, which is that could be something that takes 2, 3, 4 weeks to sort out.
Yeah. Can we just quickly go to Steve and then we'll come to Pascal?
Yeah, thanks. The next meeting is scheduled to be on next Thursday, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the 27th of May. The last date for registration for the election is the 8th of June. So if we can have a decision by the end of the meeting on the 27th, that gives plenty of time to get the registration in before the deadline, and it gives a few days for us all to think about it. I'm not going to be voting one way or the other for obvious reasons, because I'm not interested. I don't know. But Yeah, that's my proposal, is that we schedule a proposal and a vote on the issue of whether or not TCG wants me to stand as a candidate on the 27th, because that gives, as I said, a few days to think about it, and there's still plenty of time to get the registration in. But I take the point that people have made, that there's not much point in having a political, I suppose, a pressure group is one way of looking at it. If you just stand aside because some centrally organized party has possibly got a very good chance of winning, but if you don't stand, they're sure to win. You know, and there's all sorts of things in the mix.
Pascal?
This is a devil's advocate question. I like these. But if this candidate was from the Conservative Party, was representative of the Conservative Party, but they happen to be quite young, would we still be having this conversation?
Of course.
Okay, cool.
Tina?
Sorry, me again. I know the closing date you were saying is the 8th of June, which is what, about 2.5 weeks away, something like that. But that doesn't give very long to decide about leaflets, getting them printed, because that can take 2 weeks. And then you've got all the delivering, and it just doesn't leave much time if it's left until the 27th for a decision.
Okay, so Joel, very quickly, direct, and then it's Josie.
I think we could revisit the idea that Steve had about just a non-dated, non-event-wise TCG leaflet that we could alter for whatever is a really good call.
Josie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, we're not meeting again until next Thursday. So whatever happens, it'll be next Thursday by the time we sit down and start, hashing out plans. And do you know what I mean? Like, we don't have another meeting booked before next Thursday. And I would suggest that Steve's idea of doing that is good. But what I would suggest is maybe if Steve were to write up, like, just the kind of stuff that you were talking about, like who you are, like who you are essentially, and the stuff that you've noticed, and just some stuff about you. And it would be quite good if perhaps Tom, who was talking about the kind of the need for confluence and things like that, were to perhaps put forward his understanding, and perhaps Kay, like if we could actually all just put some stuff into the mix that I could kind of conglomerate into something approaching input into a conversation. And then we could invite people to come on Thursday and actually, but so that there's some kind of bringing together of the different stuff, and I could try to get that out by kind of like Monday, Tuesday to everybody, so that anybody that because most of the people that are TCG membered or TCG who are interested in TCG, who've been supporters, don't even know that we've got a candidate, or that we potentially got a candidate, or what we're doing. So maybe if we could just if everybody could just email me with anything that they feel about this particular situation, and I could try and pull that all together into a kind of an input document with all the sort of different pieces around it, just with what we've got now. Because there are bigger questions that we are going to need to take time for, but we do need to make a decision. Because if we, whichever way we go, we're going to have to explain to the rest of the TCG support why we've made that decision and why they should help us in that decision, one way or other,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Josie. I'll go to Pascal in a minute. I just wanted to say, I think we will close the assembly very shortly. It's been absolutely great, but I'm just a bit like woof. So if we go to Pascal, oh, you're muted.
Bloody Joe. I think it might be worth us all considering, or maybe this is another thing to go into your document, Josie, which is about our governing document, what do you call it? Constitution. Because we decided when we were kind of trawling over our constitution was that we don't vote, in fact, and that we try and find consensus within the group in order to make decisions. So and you know, old habits die hard, and obviously, you know, a lot of people, some people in this meeting operate in a council setting where people make proposals and vote to and from. So it's very attractive to get to that decisive point. So you know, it's yeah, that's a thing to digest. How can we together make a decision that we're all happy with? And saying that, we have already made a decision, you know, to support Steve. So you know, we're kind of wafting between a sort of decisive perspective and one that is difficult. But you know, there is a time pressure, and we have to actually, you know, come back, re-find a place where we've made a decision. And it might be that some people are, you know, we all have to be willing to sit in a place of a decision.
Josie?
Then we can leave it. It's cool. I just wanted to really thank Pascal for bringing that in, because that is the whole basis of it, that we get to a point where we co-create how we move forward. And even if it's not what somebody would have wanted, they can agree to kind of stand aside or agree to go with what the majority of people feel. And I think this is really important, not necessarily because of whether or not we make a different decision, but because of the process by which we get there. So I think whatever the kind of collective process that comes out of this, it will be stronger than us just deciding to do it. So it's like, you know, whatever the outcome is, we will have a better grounding in why we're doing that, because we'll have actually had to process it all and talk about it and discuss it and look at the different parts of it, so that we can actually, you know, really know it and comprehensively speak it.
Brilliant. If it's all right with everyone, I was just going to close on something really quickly. I touched on it earlier that, you know, personally, I think it's really cool that we are that authentic, you know, we are organic, that, you know, sometimes it's like, oh, we're going this way, we're going that way, we're going this way. And I think there's a little bit of panic there, because, you know, we do want to do what's best for the community, and we are listening to the community, and we've still got a long way to go. But I think it's, for me, I always keep in the forefront of my mind that TCG, you know, I've only been with TCG just over 2 years, and I know it's only been TCG for about 2.5, 3 years. So if you collectively look at what's been achieved, just the fact that something like this has been started here in Bideford is absolutely amazing. And the fact that we can have these discussions and just be open and honest, for me, is totally refreshing. So, you know, Steve, I just really want to make sure that you don't think we're going, we want you, we don't want you, we want you, we don't want you. But I don't get that impression that you think we do. You've been
that's what I'm thinking.
And you threw the curveball in, Steve.
I won't do it. I don't know. Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, I can't wait for Jamie to watch this, because he's going to be, what happened? But yeah, thank you ever so much. You've been a great team to facilitate. Thanks for Josie for helping, and everyone for attending. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Hopefully you will all attend on Thursday. That would be superb. So on that note, go and have a cup of tea or a glass of gin, or put your toes in the bath, whatever. And I'll see you next week.
Nice one.
Thank you, Kay. Thank you so much for awesome sharing. Thank you.
Yeah.
See you later.
What happened was that Tom came along.
Bye.
Bye.